Welcome to the Maximize Business Value podcast, brought to you by Mastery Partners, where our mission is to equip business owners like you to maximize your business value and achieve the exit of your dreams, whatever that means to you. With insights gained from over 100 business transactions, we share real-world strategies, lessons, and expert advice to help you build long-term, sustainable value in your business. Each episode is hosted by one of our Mastery certified partners. They're seasoned experts who've helped countless business owners navigate the complexities of growth, scaling, and building value. They bring first-hand experience, actionable insights, and a passion for helping you build a business that thrives. So let's dive in.
One. Hi, this is Dave Casey, and welcome to Maximize Business Value. This is a podcast for business leaders who are really passionate about growing their business and building long-term sustainable value in their business. So this show is really intended for business owners who are serious about this aspect of their business and making their business future ready. So my name is Dave Casey, and today we're pulling back the curtain on one of the, I would say, one of the most overlooked things in business value, sales, and how it's evaluated in our Transition Readiness Assessment, or the TRA. So joining me today is one of our seasoned experts from Mastery Partners, Darren Williams, to walk through what makes a sales organization value rich or value risky, and how business owners can benchmark where they are today. So welcome, Darren. So I'll ask you this next question, and we'll probably both tackle this one. But when you see a business that just is an amazing business, has a great product, great services and everything, but just has a very broken or totally undocumented sales process, what's your gut reaction when you get to that?
And frankly, that happens a lot. So my first reaction is this isn't scalable. And if I'm a buyer buying a business, I want something that I can grow and scale. I'm not buying something typically that's dependent off of one or two, all-star salespeople, right? And a lot of, especially in smaller companies, what I find is what I describe as this sink or swim kind of, we're just going to hire new people, throw them in, let them watch somebody, and then figure it out for themselves.
Yeah. And
you got this sink or swim kind of onboarding mentality, and that's really, really hard to scale, right? So much of our advice comes back to systems and processes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and we've even seen it internally at Mastery. I mean, we've tried to improve our systems and processes, and it's almost that fatal mistake that you're going to make. You say, well, we're only really going to have seasoned people on our team. I mean, all of our consultants have been in business a long time. They've bought and sold companies. They've run major companies. So we're thinking all is well. It's still important to document our processes. It's still important to really have it to the point where anyone could step in and have a level of success because we have such a good process. I think the other thing when you're talking to business owners that I've run into is that I always quiz, okay, here's your top 10 clients. What's been your personal involvement with those clients? And many times that business owner says, oh yeah, I sold ABC company back 10 years ago. I was the guy that brought that one to the table, and they start kind of bragging a little bit. And I say, well, that's a weakness, when somebody's buying them, and particularly if the owner's going to ride off into the sunset and head for the beach. It's like, well, wait a minute, that relationship lies with you. What's our guarantee as a buyer that we'll have that company as a client going forward? So, yeah, I think and you expressed it really well. I think there's a big difference between being good at sales and having a sales system that you can plug people into.
Yeah. So one of the things we talk about from time to time is the difference between your business relying on smart people showing up and making good decisions every day, right? Or do you have systems and processes where you can manage to the details,
Yep.
You can onboard some new people. You can ramp them up to being successful pretty quickly, and then you can do it over and over again,
Yep.
right? One of those systems is far more valuable than the other. One of those
Yeah.
systems is scalable, and one of those systems has predictable results, versus just relying on smart people to show up and hopefully they do a good job that day.
Yeah. The other thing too is, and this is a trap I certainly was in with my company. I had the company over 20 years, built a great team. Love those people a lot, and my top sales guy was with me for 24 years, right? So it's really easy to get into we kind of built this little ecosystem and a little family, and it's hard for people to penetrate that. So even if you hire a really good person, they kind of feel like there's this this clique that's there, because we haven't really, not everybody's held to the same standard, right? And not everybody has to report the same way, or not everybody has to forecast the same way. So we ran into that. And then the other thing is this really didn't happen much to me, but I've got a friend that had a company that they did mobile homes essentially, and scaled it big. I mean, 40 or 50 lots around several states. So it's a huge company. They had an incredibly detailed written sales process, everything down to the first 3 words you say to people when they walk onto the showroom floor. I mean, it was that level of detail, and everything through every type of sales scenario, closing techniques, documentation, verbiage, role playing. I mean, they had it down to a science. So literally anybody could be hired as a salesperson and get plugged into that system and have a level of success. The advantage of that was, when somebody was not performing, they could have that conversation with them, and it wasn't a personal, you're not performing because you're lazy, you're not performing because you're stupid, you're not performing because you forgot to come to work. No, you're not performing because maybe you didn't follow the sales process, and they can step in and go through that sales process. What were the first 3 words you said to these people when you stepped in the door? I mean, right to that level of detail. So it was never a personal confrontation. It was just, are you following the process or not? So it really took a lot of the drama out of that conversation.
Yeah, what I really like about that is this idea of, and part of the coaching comes back to this idea of law of large numbers, right?
Yeah.
So when you have a successful process, then we can apply this idea of the law of large numbers. It's like, when I do 1,000 of these, I know I get this. So you can really reverse engineer and back into your numbers.
Yeah.
It's like, what are your revenue goals? What's your budget this year?
Yeah.
What are you trying to accomplish? Well, here's how many of these things we need to do.
Exactly.
Right? We need to talk to this many clients, and we know we're successful this many times. And then so it allows, when you have systems and processes like this, and to your point, you're managing down to the details, and even the scripts and the words we're saying and the questions we're asking, right? You can really dial that in. And then, nobody's going to bat 1,000, right? Nobody's going to close 100%.
No, but boy, you'll raise those on base percentages pretty quickly. Yeah,
that's right. And it becomes predictable, and that's really the goal. Is whatever the number, whether you have a 20% closing ratio or an 80% closing ratio, as long as it's predictable, then we can dial in those numbers and activities, and then we can start achieving goals.
Yeah, and I like to see organizations that really build that sales playbook and follow it. And that way you've got that as a reference point. Even if your products and services change over time, the elements of sales really don't change. I mean, that interpersonal relationship is important. If it's not, you're in a commodity business, and you probably need to find another business, but it's even in the commodity businesses, I've seen that scalability, because the process was so well tuned, and what they could do there. So one of the terms that we've started using at Mastery is called future ready. The whole reason that people will spend the time to do the transition readiness analysis and actually dive deep into their company and look for all of these things that will inevitably, I can't speak this morning, show up in due diligence, is really future proofing their company. What what kind of metrics have you seen or any kind of signal to look for, or even your systems that you've seen successful, whether they're CRM systems like sales training, regimens you follow? What have you seen that makes a company future ready?
For me, it starts with it can't be dependent on one person. So in our world, we talk a lot about the owner, right? So
Yeah.
what's the opposite of that? Is having a good leadership team or a management team that understands the daily operations. The daily operations are not dependent on one person, right? And so maybe you have divisions or even departments in your company, right? And you have people in control of those things, and hopefully even layers, right? Several layers down, where even in that department or that division, it's not relying on even one person or a department head, right?
And the
So
concept of having an heir apparent for every job. So if you've got a key position, you've got an understudy for that position. Should
yeah, and
something
depending on the
happen.
size of the company, that may
Yeah.
go 2, 3, 4, 5 layers deep
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
each division or department. Again, adequate for the size of the company, right?
Yeah.
And then, so people, right? So we talk a lot about right people, right seats, and then systems and processes, right? This idea of predictable decision making. So one of the things I ask owners from time to time, I was like, listen, I was like, if your people are walking around the office going, hey, is Darren in a good mood today? I need to tell him some stuff. It's like, man, you've got some work to do, right?
Yeah. Really.
So,
Because that
and are
day may
you going to
never
handle
come.
this?
You may never be in a good mood.
Well, and frankly, are you going to handle this customer complaint, depending on your mood,
Yeah.
right? That if that's the case, then it is impossible for your people to ever predict, well, is he in a good mood or not? Sometimes he does this, sometimes he does that. So as
Yeah.
much as possible, it's this idea of predictable decision making. When this happens, this is what we do, because it aligns with our core values, it aligns with our commitments, and aligns with who we are. So the more you can drill that down through your organization, the more future ready you're going to be. So it's
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep coming back to this idea of predictable, from systems and processes to results to revenue to decision making, all the above. The more predictable things are in your business, the more future ready you're going to be.
It's interesting. We did the very tail end of when I had my company. We started doing we had started doing Net Promoter Score to figure out how our clients viewed us, but we started to do internal Net Promoter scoring as well, and just to figure out
Okay.
how do the employees feel about working with us. And of course, today in the days of Glassdoor and everything else, a lot of times it's all out there. How people feel about you as a manager, or you as an owner and your company. But we found some interesting things, and that predictability was probably number one. That they wanted to know
Sure.
what would happen when adversity struck. What's going to happen? Are people going to run around like crazy, or do we have a system and a process to take care of that? And how quickly do we get back on track? And this could be like losing a key employee. It could be losing a key customer. It could be a supplier goes out of business or gets purchased or whatever. So a lot of things external to your company can happen to you that you have to be ready for. And I think I love that idea of predictability, what you're talking about. That is the key to making that thing work. So
Well, just a couple of points on that. So one of the questions we ask, we're talking about the TRA today. So one of the questions we ask is, do you do an annual employee survey?
yeah,
And when it comes to employee engagement, how do your people view working there, right?
yeah,
One of the things, I used to talk about in my business was, hey, everyone here is smart and talented. You all have choices, and it's not lost on
yeah,
me that you choose to come here and work with us. And I appreciate that very much. Right. And that was my approach. And that's how it wasn't like, well, you have to, and I'm paying you and you should act a
yeah,
certain way. It was, and frankly, one other point is this idea that at our core, humans are selfish, right? We try not to be, like, we try to pretend like we're not,
yeah,
but at our core, we're all selfish. We have our own reasons.
sure,
And as leaders, I think we need to acknowledge that, because whatever happens in your business, whether it's normal, ordinary, every day, whether something massive's happened, whatever it is, everybody views that situation through the lens first of what's in this for me, Or
Yeah.
what does this mean for
How's
me?
this
How
going to
does this
affect me?
affect me?
Yeah. Yeah.
So my point to that is, instead of fighting that and going, well, my people shouldn't feel that way, just to
Yeah.
acknowledge it and then answer the question. Here's what this means for you. Here's your
Yeah.
piece in this. Here's how and why I need your help moving forward. And
Yeah.
here's the goal, and here's where we're going. And once you can tackle that communication piece and address it as opposed to fighting it, that, in my experience, that tends to smooth things out quite a bit.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we got just a couple more things, and we'll wrap this up. So, for the business owner that may be listening to this, has got this far along in our broadcast here, and just realizing, I'm scoring pretty low on some of these things in sales. What's the most practical first step you think they can take if they realize they have a sales problem?
Man, there's so many things, but the one thing I would say is be decisive. Is
Yeah.
I see people, I engage with them, have coffee with a lot of folks, and it's like they know something's not right, they know something's kind of broken, but they just can't quite decide, right? And what happens, and I saw this in my own business. So back up 10, 15 years ago, it's like I got frustrated and I woke up and I realized, man, this past year looked a whole lot like the year before that.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
and
Know that well.
at some point, you have to decide to do something different. So if it's specifically sales, maybe it's engaging a coach or a professional, maybe it's engaging a sales trainer, maybe it's finding a peer that you think is doing it right. Maybe they're in another market and they'll talk to you, or maybe they're next door. I don't know. But my point is to reach out, find someone, read a book. I mean, that was, 10 or 15 years ago, that was a large part of my transition, was a commitment to start reading. Previous to that, I hadn't read a whole lot. And so whatever it is, I would just say be decisive. Decide to change, decide to do something different, decide to do something better.
So that's great. So with that, I'll make this a call to action for the folks that are listening here. So sales really isn't just about closing deals. It's about building predictable, transferable, an engine that can be transferred for growth. And if you're really not sure how your sales function stacks up, maybe a couple of things we talked about today have triggered something for you. Reach out to us at Mastery Partners, and we can do the readiness score for you. The TRA is a wonderful tool. Even if that's all you do with us, that's just a superb tool, and it really will help you on that journey to maximize business value. So this is the Maximize Business Value podcast, where we give practical advice to business owners how to build long-term sustainable value in their business. Be sure to tune in each week. We do this on a regular basis. Subscribe to our channel so you won't miss a simple episode. Single episode, how's that? So again, this is Dave Casey and Darren Williams. Darren, thanks for coming, and we really enjoyed the time today.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate your time.
All right. See y'all later.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Maximize Business Value podcast. I hope today's conversation sparked new ideas on how you can continue driving value in your business. But remember, it's not just about listening. It's about taking massive action. Visit our website, masterypartners.com, for more resources. Grab a copy of any of the books in the Maximize Business Value series on Amazon or via the links below. And don't hesitate to reach out if you want to know how to apply these concepts to your business. So until next time, I'm Tom Bronson, reminding you to relentlessly execute while you maximize business value.